So picture this. It's 1967. The summer of love is in full swing on the West Coast, right? But over in New York City, there's this band exploring all the darkness and grit that the hippies were ignoring. That band was the Velvet Underground, and their first album, it was a total commercial bomb. But here's the crazy part, and what we're going to unpack right now. That failure is exactly what made them legends.
So, how does that even happen? How can a band whose records basically nobody bought end up being one of the most influential groups ever? That's the big puzzle we're tackling today. And trust me, the answer is going to completely flip how you think about success.
You've probably heard this quote before, but it just nails it. The great producer Brian Eno said that everyone who bought one of those few thousand copies started a band. I mean, think about that. The record didn't sell millions. Instead, it was like this creative spark that lit a fire under thousands of other musicians. It wasn't just an album. It was basically the seed for whole new genres of music.
And when we say it sold poorly, what are we really talking about? Well, their debut album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, clawed its way to number 121 on the Billboard charts. That's it. In a year packed with massive hits, they were barely even a blip on the radar.
And this chart really puts it into perspective, doesn't it? That little sliver of a bar? Yeah, that's the Velvets. And that massive skyscraper next to it? That's what a typical #1 hit looked like back then. They weren't just a flop. They were like commercially microscopic, a rounding error. Okay, so let's get into the first big idea of this whole story. We're going to see how being a total commercial failure was actually the best thing that could have happened to them. It wasn't a setback. It was the key that unlocked everything. To really get this, you have to remember what the music industry was like in the 60s. Everything was about the radio. And to get on the radio, you had to be radio ready. What does that mean? Well, it meant your songs had to be short, under 3 minutes, they had to be catchy, and the lyrics, totally safe. It was this super rigid formula, a box you had to fit into if you wanted a shot at a hit. And the Velvet Underground, well, they were the exact opposite of all of that. See, since they knew they weren't going to get on the radio anyway, they were totally free. They could mess around with these long, droning sounds, write about topics that were completely taboo. I mean, things that would make a radio programmer's head explode. They could crank up the feedback and let a song go on for 7, 8, 10 minutes. They had this shield of unmarketability. It protected them. And this is the absolute key. Think about it. If that first album had been a huge hit, what would the record label have said? Do that again. Give us another one just like it. But because it bombed, nobody was paying attention. It was like they were handed a blank check to do whatever they wanted creatively. They weren't a product anymore. They were an art project.
And that freedom wasn't just about the music. It shaped their whole identity. It let them become something different, something way more powerful in the long run.
You can kind of split creative people into two camps, right? You've got the entertainer who gives the masses what they want, and then you have the artist who follows their own vision no matter what. The entertainer wants to be popular, the artist ends up with a cult following. The Velvet's commercial failure basically cemented them in that artist column, for good.
Back in '67, this was a huge problem for them. They weren't folk rock. They weren't psychedelic rock. Nobody knew what box to put them in. But looking back, that was their superpower. Because you can't just write them off as, oh, another '60s band. No, they were their own thing, something totally new.
And that's how you get the whole myth of the misunderstood genius. It's a classic story, right? The artist who is ahead of their time. But for that story to work, there's one thing you absolutely need. You have to be misunderstood at first. That initial flop, that public rejection, it wasn't the end of their story. It was chapter 1 of them becoming icons.
So, where did this unique artist identity come from? Well, it was forged in a very specific, very strange place. And again, their failure was what kept them there.
You have to remember, these guys weren't just some rock band playing in a garage. They were part of a whole art experiment. They were the house band at Andy Warhol's studio, The Factory, for his insane multimedia show, The Exploding Plastic Inevitable. You just can't understand the band without understanding this context.
I mean, their live shows were the polar opposite of what you'd see on TV. Forget polished performances. We're talking chaotic strobe lights blinding you, weird art films being projected right on top of the band members, and then, cutting through all of it, the screeching sound of John Cale's electric viola. It wasn't entertainment. It was an assault on the senses. It was weird, and it was meant to be.
So let's play that what-if game again. What if they'd had a #1 hit? They'd have been yanked out of Warhol's factory and booked into regular concert halls. The pressure would have been on to be, well, more normal, a regular rock band. And that whole incredible art context,
Gone. Stripped away. Their failure literally kept them underground, where their weird, unique identity was allowed to thrive.
So when we put it all together, what's the final verdict? The big takeaway? It's this. The Velvet Underground didn't just leave us with some amazing albums. They left us a blueprint.
Because their story proves something really powerful. It proves that in the world of art, there are currencies other than money. And sometimes, long-term influence is worth way, way more than short-term income.
And that blueprint they left behind? It's almost like a 3-step guide for any artist who feels like an outsider. Step 1, don't compromise for commercial success. Step 2, when you fail commercially, embrace the incredible freedom that gives you. And step 3, use that freedom to create something that lasts, something that influences people for decades.
And that really leaves us with one big question, doesn't it? The story of the Velvets feels more relevant than ever today. In a world that is just obsessed with metrics, with streaming numbers, with TikTok views, with going viral, how do we even begin to measure true, lasting influence? What's the Velvet Underground of our time, and would we even recognize it?